Everybody, I'm on the line right now with TJP, who is currently being seen on IMPACT Wrestling every week, and as we just found out a couple of days ago, you're going to be getting an X Division Championship match. You're going to be facing Bey with Rohit Raju on the other side of the ring as well in a triple threat match. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well, and yeah, throwing my hat back into the X Division ring. I don't know if I got the win for it anymore, man. I've been a tag wrestler for a year.
So that's a very interesting point, because as I was watching this week's show, Madison Rayne made a comment that you're pretending to be a tag team wrestler. And when you first came back to Impact Wrestling, you said one of your goals, or one of the things that appealed to you, is you wanted to work with Fallah Bahh. So how do you feel about hearing something like that you're pretending to be a tag team wrestler? Because I'd argue that you guys have made a pretty successful duo so far.
Well, she's definitely half right. I'm pretending to be a wrestler is really the thing. But I do think that we've done pretty well, especially for, having only been put together for a year. I think that we have a natural chemistry that some of the other teams don't. And I think that sometimes it can get lost, like from a viewing standpoint, because we have a size discrepancy. Usually camaraderie comes from the physical elements of it. But a fan had sent me a picture on social media the last, week or so, and it was a comparison with Owen and Yokozuna with me and Fallah, and I thought that that's an amazing comparison. One, I think it's like, really, I'm kind of humbled by it, because I've always been a really big Owen fan, and those are two all-time greats. But I thought it was unique because you don't see a lot of guys that, like a junior and a heavy, matched up together. But outside of that, I think our camaraderie is really well, and we're both Filipino, and we were pretty much like brothers in and out of the ring. So I think that shines through when you see us, the way we interact in the ring, and even when we're outside of it, we have a different type of connection that's, I think, deeper than some of the other teams for that reason. But I think that ever since coming back with Impact, there's a lot of singles matches that I know for sure the administration really wanted me to have. But I almost like taking a dog for a walk. I kept trying to pull them in a different direction, because I really wanted to go into the tag division. That's been a passion of mine for a while, and to work with Fallah especially, because I think the world of him. And so now I feel like I'm going to split my time a little bit, but I take it as a compliment. I think it just means that my toolbox is big enough that there's multiple things that I can accomplish that people see on my horizon.
Yeah, and I think you bringing up the Owen and Yoko comparison, that's the ultimate tip of the cap. That's a pretty nice compliment. And getting back to the title match itself, you tweeted a picture, I think last week, where you said the only thing missing, and it was a picture of you when you were Manic, and you were the X Division champion, and you've won the Cruiserweight Classic, you won the Cruiserweight title. You've been an X Division champion in TNA, but it was not TJP. So what would a title win at this stage mean for you, under TJP and not under another character?
Well, I think for me, the thing about it is, especially this year, having recently in the last few years, I came from playing for one team. I was a Cruiserweight champion in WWE, and that was a big moment and a big, I think, kind of staple for the generation. When I was X Division champion, I was one of many guys that were carrying that at the time. And the X Division had been sort of a generational defining point for, people that were fans of the early to mid 2000s, kind of like the Cruiserweight title in WCW was for me growing up. The X Division kind of defined a generation for a lot of guys, but I became champion sort of at the end of that generation. But I think now, having sort of, been blessed with being kind of the forefront of the Cruiserweights of the modern era with the WWE Cruiserweight title, and, recently being in the Super J Cup for New Japan, for example, and then the Super Junior Tag League, and hopefully some more junior stuff. I know that Hiromu and I would like to get, matches together in New Japan now that he's helping, and with him being the junior champ, there's stuff on the horizon there for me as well. So to do it now, I think would mean something very special to me because nobody's ever really kind of had that trifecta. I don't know that there's any junior or cruiser in history that's ever done, you know, the WWE Cruiserweight title, the X Division title, and the junior title in New Japan, which are pretty much the three staples of this, I guess, you know, weight division or you know, demographic, I guess you could say,
yeah.
amongst the wrestling community. So to be able to do it now at this stage, I think for that reason, because in totality, it's such a meaningful championship in history. You know, I feel like the X Division title is up there with the Intercontinental title as far as a lot of the greatest guys of all time at this point now have held that. You know, AJ Styles, we're talking Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, like these guys are all X Division guys. So, you know, to do that in totality with having my hat in the mix of the other stuff, I mean, that puts me in amazing company.
You're responsible for Chris Bey's first loss in Impact. And after the match, he said he was saving his arm to fight another day. He did an interview with the Arm Drag Takedown podcast, and he said, you know, despite there being a loss on his record, he claims you don't want a piece of him. So going into a triple threat like this on Tuesday, there's a lot of attention on him as the champion. You are a former champion. You have the accolades that I already mentioned, the tenure. So how do you feel about not only just matching up with him, but Rohit as the third guy in this match? Like, I feel like he's not getting enough attention. Maybe he should be getting more.
You know, I feel to that point, Rohit is kind of the wild card in the match. I've thought for the last couple of years or so that he's, you know, one of the more dynamic rising talents just in wrestling in general, and especially in Impact Wrestling. We've had one or two matches where we've faced off in Impact specifically, and I think that his toolbox is pretty unique. And he's kind of a heavy hitter for the X Division too. People don't realize like that he's kind of a bruiser too. And I feel like Chris Bey is like a supernova type. I mean, he's been wrestling like as long as my cup of coffee has been warm. and he's gone from the starting line to the major leagues so fast. And I remember seeing him in the gym because he's like a Southwest region guy, like LA, Vegas, like that area. And I remember seeing him a year ago and telling him, you're a guy I'm going to see at these levels down the road. This was when I was in WWE. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, here we are a year later, this guy is blowing up. And I think that he's got a unique charisma about him and physical talent. He reminds me a lot of myself. I mean, he's very sure of himself. He's very confident. You know, I'll definitely rip his other arm off if he wants to protect the one. But I think that, you know, the duo, like having to be across from them, I feel like Rohit is a real wild card because, you know, he's got such a unique toolbox on him.
I think that whole conversation about it, you said the region. I've talked to a lot of different people over the past couple weeks and months, and you know, we've talked about being from Ohio. I talked to Chris not too long ago, and you know, you mentioned like the West Coast, and I think it's really interesting to see, even though it's internet, you know, national TV, you're still getting these groups, not even just from a specific promotion, but you're seeing these groups where it's almost like a territory system, and it's really cool to see and hear personal experiences like you just shared with him saying, you know, I'm going to see you on a bigger stage in a year. And you're 35 years old. You've been wrestling longer. You've been spending more time in wrestling than not. So do you kind of see a change like that where things are kind of coming full circle and you're starting to see a little bit more what's old is new again?
I mean, I definitely think that what's old is new again. A lot of guys, it's so funny because like guys will see me, you know, do my thing, and I guess I got a kind of a unique style to me as far as the physical stuff I do. I'm kind of a classically trained wrestler, so you know, I came up at a time. I was a '90s guy, so I came up at a time that was really old schoolish. But a lot of the things I can do physically, people haven't seen for like 50 years, and so a lot of people think it's new. They see me stand on my head and give a guy a head scissors, like, oh man, you know, you have this unique way of doing these things and that. And I always have to tell them, like, guys, Santo was doing this in 1950. It's just, you guys are so young now. Wrestling fans are so young, they haven't seen it. To them, like the ruthless aggression era is old. So it's like anything that existed before that, and I'm a throwback guy, like older, Japanese wrestling, especially with Lucha Libre. I got my start in Lucha Libre. So, stylistically, you just see stuff that guys do that's been around 100 years. And people don't realize it. And I do think that there is something to be said about the territory divide, especially now with like COVID and everything. It seems like regional wrestling is starting all over. And I kind of think regional wrestling is going to thrive more than the mid-level, like national independence, because a lot of those are going to have a hard time, from a business standpoint. But regional wrestling, is going to have more dedicated fan base because it's, it's regional and it sort of has more of a homegrown atmosphere to it. So I do think that there's sort of a restart with that in a way. But I mean, even when I was starting out, like guys in Southern California didn't know much about the East Coast guys, and then vice versa. We would go to the East Coast, and guys on the East Coast didn't know much about us either. So I think it's always been around to an extent, but I think that there's probably a tipping point around 2008 to 2014 or somewhere in between there, where social media had gotten so big and the interconnectivity of everything that it just felt like everybody was part of the same universal pool. So now we're kind of going back to the early 2000s, late 90s, that era where, some of the regional stuff is going to be more, self-contained.
Yeah. And I know I can probably spend a lot of time listing where you've been, but just in general, Mexico, Japan, United States, you said, you learn the Lucha Libre style, and you mentioned, learning from the past, like decades ago. And I know you kind of caught a little bit of heat a couple weeks ago for the spending 22 years waiting and not wanting that to be the case. And
yeah.
I know you clarified that because you didn't feel like anybody was beyond, but how do you feel like in hindsight how that was received, and do you feel like that opponent is maybe still out there and you just haven't worked with them?
I hope the opponent's out there. I don't really care how it's received. None of that stuff matters. I mean, people like to think it matters, but it doesn't. And to be honest, I mean, for somebody to, especially for a crowd that prides itself on critical thinking, if you don't have enough critical thinking skills to not understand that that's not really an offensive thing to say, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's narratives. I mean, people it's judging a book by its cover. People have their mind about you decided before you say or do anything, just as soon as they see you. And for some guys they can do no wrong, for some guys they can do no right. But I've learned from a lot of guys, but that was never the question. It was never really like, have you learned from anybody? Of course I've learned from people. I've been doing this 22 years. The point I think I was trying to make was just that, after a while you get tired of having to fetch your own answers because you're not finding enough mentors that will teach you more than just a thing or two. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was always the case. Like being so young, not a lot of guys really wanted to help out a young guy who had a pretty good aptitude for it, so whether, I don't know if they felt threatened by me or they just thought I was insignificant, which I think would probably be more of the latter. Like they just didn't think much of me. So I spent so much of my career, a lot like what, Chris Jericho said in his first, I think it was his first WWE DVD special, where he said he was flying blind. He's like, I didn't have anybody telling me where to go, what to do, nothing. I was doing it all by myself. And that's really kind of what I was trying to explain, is that, you get sick of having to kind of answer your own questions. I've been in guys that I think the world of. I think the world of all the guys, and I sort of think it's sort of a backwards narrative because, as they used to say, Sean Waltman, 1-2-3 Kid. If you couldn't work with Kid, you couldn't work. Have an old saying in wrestling, this guy could work with a broomstick. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea. Like, if you can't make magic with somebody, and if it's not easy, if you ever feel like you're out of your league with somebody, then neither one of you are really good at this. It's like, the idea is it should be easy. It should come off like butter. So to me, like, it's not just that I do think that I have a high aptitude for this, and I do think that I'm really good at this, and I have a lot of experience, but I think everybody I've been in the ring with is great, just as great as I could ever be, because I've never felt like that. And that's a testament to them, not to me. Like, for me to be in the ring and know I can lead anybody through and it's going to be like magic, it's easy, you know, and that's a compliment to them. And these are just positions. Some of the best wrestlers, some of the best anything in the world don't necessarily drive the boat. That's not a test of greatness. It's just a positional thing. You know, Michael Jordan didn't pass the ball to himself. He always had a point guard. Doesn't mean he's not the greatest of all time. So, you know, just being a natural point guard or a quarterback, like, you know, Jerry Rice, greatest receiver ever, but he wasn't throwing the ball to himself. And that's really what I was trying to say. Is that I've been blessed to work with a lot of guys, but I've never been, you know, in with somebody that I felt like was beyond me, but I still think they're all great. And I certainly don't think I'm better than any of them.
I think there's a bigger conversation to be had about hearing somebody's opinion and, you know, respecting it and just leaving it at that, because you could bring up any topic in recent memory, especially in wrestling. But I think your answer, just because of your experience going through wrestling, and it's a global journey, and you mentioned Chris Jericho, like, his experience is going to be different than yours, and it's going to be different than another guy, and it's a generational thing. So I think that trying to simplify it, I think people need to understand that you're not trying to insult anybody. I think, you know, you're coming at it from the right place, but it's maybe lost in translation.
Yeah.
And you spoke with one of our other guys, Kevin. I think it was a head of Lucha Vavoom earlier in the year, and you said you never had a WrestleMania moment. So, you know, you said the J-Cup was your WrestleMania moment, and I compare the quarterback comment to that because, you know, I understand it. To a lot of wrestlers, like, Japan is it. WWE's not it. It never was, or it's not anymore. Like, so I understand where you're coming from, and it's just whether it's lost in translation or text, or, like you said, they don't want to give you the benefit.
It's a combo of generational perception too. You know, I don't think everything is like a narrative where people want to force what they think on you, but a little bit of it is. But a lot of it is like, so for example, a lot of the guys that took offense to it might bring up a guy like Okada or like Liger, but they haven't been watching me that much longer than, say, the Cruiserweight Classic. But guys, I've been doing this 22 years. Liger's known me since I was 17 years old. So he's trusted me to quarterback a match with him for 15 years at this point. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise that we work together that way and we have a lot of mutual respect. I still think he's the greatest of all time. That's not what the question is. And I think that that's sort of the thing. There's a broken connection between what they perceive as like ranking, who they think is in what tier, and whether or not they should be, you know, a certain level of competence. But this is all subjective. I mean, there's no real scoreboard in this. There's no real competition. So therefore, nobody can really be better or worse than the next guy. We can all do it or we can't. And everybody has their own idea of what's good or not. So I think sort of that's where people get lost in it, because some people, if I'm not their flavor, so to speak, they're like, well, forget this guy. He shouldn't think that he's like is good or competent. But it's not about being good or competent. I just know like what I can do with my art, you know?
Yeah, I think that sums it up. If somebody's not a fan of yours, they're going to try to skew what you're saying. So, I'll get you out on this. When you came back to Impact, you said the jitney was still moving. It was a phrase that was near and dear to you. Now that you've had some time with the company, can you see Impact being your home for the future, or is the jitney still moving?
I think the jitney's still moving a little bit, but
a little slower.
It was an easy decision for me to a little slower. It was an easy decision, I think, for me to choose to come back to Impact. You know, I had a lot of options on the table. I still do. I still would like to get back down to Mexico, but the thing that was unique to me is that they knew right away what they wanted to do, and they had a plan not just for where they would see me, which is, I'm grateful that they see me like they think so highly of me, but they had such a great plan for where they wanted to be as a company, and the transition was very clear. So I think now we're starting to see those plans come to fruition from the outside looking in, but from the inside, I saw this like right away. And the roster's incredible, top to bottom. I think that guys who open the show one night can close it the next. I've never seen this type of balance in any company ever. And the camaraderie is just as high as the ability, because we're all in one room and there's really no hierarchy. And that's, for young wrestlers, if you're listening, like that's a blessing that you just don't have every day. So if you ever find that in any locker room, like stick with it, because that's a type of atmosphere that is just, it's invaluable. The women's division strong, the tag division strong, X division has always been strong, and I think the heavyweight division is strong. So, I think with the recent signings and the shakeups and the upward trajectory, it's a place that I kind of already put one foot in the water, like thinking this is a pool I'd like to stay in for a while and lay some roots. But, especially with their relationship with New Japan now, like being good and me having the freedom to do both, and New Japan, obviously like as well values me, pretty high, like, and I'm grateful for that, and having the ability to do both. I feel like these are the roots where I probably would want to lay down.
Okay. TJP, you have an X Division Championship match this coming week at night 1 of the Emergence special event. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Bill.